So welcome everyone to Living Beyond Limits. You all know I'm Reverend Jennifer Spear. We are part of Centers for Spiritual Living, and those of you who are joining us online, also welcome to our Sunday morning service. And so let's together start this service by reading our mission statement that's on the front of your bulletin. We are a sanctuary where people can discover and reveal the presence of God within their own being and experience their oneness with all life. Through the realization of this inner presence of love and peace, we give way to the evolutionary impulse of the divine and become a beneficial presence in the world. So that's exactly what we are doing here at Living Beyond Limits, as we are giving ourselves an opportunity to move back into that place within ourselves that knows, yes, indeed, that we are one with that infinite presence. That one life, that one presence, that one power that expresses itself in and through everything, that is also expressing within us. That it is our own divine nature. It is what we have come from, and it is what we come as we come to live on this planet. That means then that what is true of that divine presence is also true of us. That the love of the divine lives within us. That the peace of the divine already exists within us. That the power and the wholeness and the intelligence, all of those things are already innate to our nature. Because what happens when we come to recognize that that is already within us, then we are not so reliant on the world to tell us that we are okay, to tell us that we are enough, to show us peace and love. Of course, we would prefer that. But when it doesn't, we aren't such victims to life as it puts us in a place of power. Because we can tap into that within ourselves and bring that forward. And as we do that, it changes the conversation, the situation, the relationship, and we come to the world differently. And as we come to the world emanating that infinite one, we come as love and generosity and care and kindness. And as we do that, we change this world. We become a beneficial presence to all of those around us. And because everything is connected to everything else, and it's all part of this oneness, we actually affect the whole. It's like ripples on the pond that move out to affect the whole of humanity. And so I say thank you to each and every single one of you for answering the call of your own spirit to be waking up, to be walking this path, to be being this beneficial presence in the world. Thank you for that. And so at Living Beyond Limits, we focus a lot on and talk a lot about being a conduit for spirit to express in this world. And one of the main things that I like to talk about and that we talk about specifically is being a conduit for love, the love that spirit is to express in the world. And when we give way to that infinite love, or when we allow its expression through us, it gets expressed as kindness and as care, as compassion, as generosity. And then it is from that consciousness that we move out into the world and we act from that awareness. And it is from that awareness also that we do service projects here at Living Beyond Limits. We do things like collect school supplies for children and give them to them. We do things like create Mother's Day bags of toiletry items and pretty things for mothers who are staying in a women's shelter. We do things like adopt a family at Christmas, and we do things like the card campaign that we just did last month, writing cards for soldiers and for people who are living in convalescent homes. All of that is done from the consciousness that there is a power for good in this universe, and it can use us. We act as conduits for that good and conduits for that love. To me, that is really the crux of spiritual living. To me, that's really what spiritual living is all about. And the more we awaken to spirit that lives within us, and to our own divine nature, the more readily we express that love that is already within us. Raymond Charles Barker said, "You can only be what you are aware of being. You can only be what you believe yourself to be. The more that I remind myself of what I am spiritually, the more I cease to be what I am not. The more that you remind yourself of what you are spiritually, the more you cease to be what you are not. So he says you can only be what you're aware of being. I know for all of us, we have all awakened to the degree that we have of that presence of love within us. And as we have woken up to that and know that it's there and recognize it, that is how we act in the world. And so when he says also, the more that I remind myself of what I am spiritually, the more I cease to be what I am not, for that means the more conscious that I am of the fact that I am the love of spirit in form, the less I find myself being judgmental of other people. The less I find myself separating myself from other people, especially other people that are different than I am. And so that same premise is true when we recognize the infinite nature of spirit. When we recognize that infinite nature and all that the infinite is our nature and is the very nature of our life. That means then that what is true is part of spirit is this absolute creativity from which the cosmos has sprung forth. It is the intelligence of the universe that is within everything, that creativity and that intelligence is innate to our beingness, and it is expressed as our own creativity. It is expressed as our insights, as solutions to problems, as answers to questions, even as knowing who it is to help you fix your cell phone when you can't figure out how to work it. That's that intelligence that lives within us. That principle of abundance is also the very nature of our life, and it lives within us. That means then that the abundance of the universe shows up for us as our life as an abundance of friends, as an abundance and a bounty of food, as the abundance of clothes that you have in your drawers at home, as the abundance of friends, as a friend taking you to lunch, as opportunities that show up in your life. All of those are ways that abundance is present in and as and through your very life. That presence of perfection and order and balance are also inherent to our being. We can't be separate from that forever. And that shows up as that perfection, and that order shows up as your breakfast that you ate this morning turning into muscle and bone. It shows up that you don't have to tell your heart to beat, that you don't have to tell a cut in your hand to heal, that you don't have to know how that intelligence, that order unfolds as that already. The fact that you can walk and talk at the same time, that's balance. That's order. And the peace and the harmony that spirit is are also already present within you. That is why you can float in a pool and just let your cares float away. That is why you can sit in meditation and find that place of stillness within you and find the peace that has always been there. That is why you can go to bed and have a good night's sleep and then wake up feeling refreshed, regardless of what happened yesterday. What that means then is that power and that presence and that principle for good is innate to our beingness. And it also means that if there is a power and a presence and a principle for good, we can use it also. And we use it by owning the fact that it's already present within us, that it's already the nature of our life, that what is true of the one is true of us. And we increase our experience of it in and through us by owning that it's already there. The problem for all of us is that most often we are looking at the material world and everything that's happening in our world, and we think that that is what controls our experience of life, that is what controls what's going on inside of us. You know, we think that what's happening in the economy controls what's happening with our own financial abundance. We think that what's happening in the political world controls or is responsible for our inner peace. We think that our neighbor or our spouse, when they're being difficult, that they then control our ability to love and to be kind and to be generous and to be compassionate. But what's happening in the world, yes, it affects our human thinking and it affects our emotions in the moment, but it doesn't cause our ongoing experience. It isn't the cause or the source of our continuing experience. It isn't the source of our peace or our harmony or our love or our abundance. It's kind of like if you had a picture on the wall that was covered in wavy glass. The wavy glass doesn't change the picture. The picture has always been there and will always be there exactly as it is, regardless of the fact if there's wavy glass over the top of it or not. That means also then that the peace and the harmony and the love, the creativity, the intelligence, the order, the harmony, the abundance, all of those things are always there, present in us as our lives beneath the wavy glass that we are so focused on. And so I have a story that I'd like to share with you. It says, once there was a business executive who was sunken in debt and could see no way out. Creditors were closing in on him. Suppliers were demanding payment. He sat on a park bench, head in hands, wondering if anything could save his company from insolvency. Suddenly, an old man appeared before him. "I see that something is wrong with you," he said. After listening to the executive's woes, the old man said, "I believe I can help you." He asked the man his name and wrote out a check and pushed it into his hand, saying, "Take this money. Meet me here exactly 1 year from today, and you can pay me back at that time." Then he turned and disappeared as quickly as he came. The business executive saw in his hand a check for $100,000, signed by Andrew Carnegie, one of the richest men in the world at that time. "I can erase my problems in an instant," he realized. But instead, the executive decided to put the uncashed check in a safe. Just knowing that it was there might give him the strength to work out a way to save his business, he thought. With revived hope, he negotiated better deals. He extended terms of payment. He closed several big sales. Within a few months, he was out of debt and making money again. Exactly 1 year afterward, the executive returned to the park with the uncashed check of $100,000. At the same time, the old man appeared there. Just as the executive was about to hand the check back to the man and share his success story, a nurse came running up and grabbed the old man. "I'm so glad I caught him," she cried. "He's always escaping from the rest home and telling people that he's Andrew Carnegie." The astonished executive just stood there, stunned. All year long, he'd been wheeling and dealing, buying and selling, convinced that he had a $100,000 check behind him. Suddenly, he realized it wasn't the money, real or imagined, that had turned his life around. It was his newfound self-confidence that gave him the power to achieve anything he went after. So it's really all about our consciousness. It's about our beliefs. It's about our awareness. It's about what we think. And so when we recognize there's something beneath the wavy glass that is eternal and unchanging, and it is the opulence of the universe or the intelligence or the peace or the harmony or the love or whatever it is we're seeking, it puts us in a place of power. Raymond Charles Barker said, "In your acceptance of your problems, you fail to realize that within you is a power and intelligence, spiritual know-how, and when recognized by you and employed by you through tools of right thinking and right feeling, causes the problem to be nothing. It's about what we know that enables us to do what it is that we want to do. Just like that businessman, he knew that he could rely on that money and fall back on it, which gave him what he needed to do to move forward. So the problem really is that we're only looking at the surface of what's happening in our life, the wavy glass. We forget that there is something beneath it that is far greater, something that is ever present and unwavering and absolute. That is the nature of life, and that is the nature of our life. I know that here, all of us at Live and Beyond Limits, we live in that place where we want to give way to Spirit. We want to give way to our Spirit. We want to contribute to the world. We want to contribute good to this world and make it a better place. At the same time, we also want to be able to create the life that we want. We want the tools to change the things that aren't working in our lives, things like dis-ease or disharmony or lack. Ernest Holmes reminds us that the will of God for you is the will of a boundless life flowing through you. It is the will of joy, of success, of happiness, of peace, of abundance. That's the will of life for each of us. And so how do we get there then? The inspiration for this talk was a quote that I read by Deepak Chopra this week in his book, Total Meditation. He said, "It doesn't work to worship a God that is merciless, vengeful, or unforgiving. God is meant to be a model for humanity." God is meant to be a model for humanity. That says to me, it is up to us to recognize that what is true of that, what is true of the infinite, is a model of what is true for us. And so if Spirit is meant to be a model for us, to express love and creativity, to experience joy and generosity and caring, then maybe the infinite is also a model for us to experience living in absolute abundance. Maybe Spirit is a model for us to live in that which is a free, unhindered flow of good. Maybe that model is a model of our true nature and the nature of our life, the nature of life itself, which is abundance and opulence. Maybe that absolute intelligence and that perfection, which is the ground of all being, is a model for our health. That it's a model for our own, that intelligence for our own inner knowing and our intuition and knowing what's right and what's wrong and when to do what is ours to do. That we can hear when we move beyond the clamor of the world and the clamor of our jabbering human minds. Maybe that infinite one is a model for the peace that passes understanding. It only requires that we access it. It's like electricity exists independent of appliances, yet appliances need electricity to plug into in order to do what they are meant to do. Only when they're plugged in can the electricity be distributed. We plug in through our beliefs, through our consciousness. And so the title of my talk today is Infinitely Yours. Spirit is infinitely yours. And I'm talking about that the source and the supply and the fabric and the activity of the good that we seek is already available. That is one of the core concepts in the science of mind. That concept says all conceivable good is eternally available. ready to flow into human experience. This flow is activated and increased by our belief, faith, and acceptance. I've lost where I am. Okay. So we access that which spirit is. We embody it, we know it, we accept it by recognizing that it's already true. We recognize the creativity and the intelligence and the perfection and the peace and the order and the harmony and the love, that is the nature of our lives and it's the nature of who we are. Eric Butterworth reminds us, thought itself does not create. It either places us in the flow or it obstructs the flow. The flow is already happening. The infinite good of the universe is already happening, but our belief either places us in the flow where it flows into us and through us, or our negative beliefs and our we can't do this, obstructs that flow. We can't have, we can't do, we can't be. So our call then is to recognize that limitation, any limitation we are experiencing in our lives, is a false conclusion. It's a false conclusion about life or about who we are. Dis-ease and disharmony are incomplete perceptions of reality. We're not seeing what is beneath the wavy glass. We're just looking at the surface. So our job then is to do whatever it takes for us to see beneath the wavy glass, to see that changeless picture which is beneath what's happening in this material world. Our spirit already knows the truth. That's why we come here. We move back into a knowingness that lives within us. Our spirit already knows the truth, but our human egoic mind seems to have forgotten for some reason. So our call then is to read or study, to be inspired by people that have had glimpses of that ultimate reality and have written about them, like that reading that Barbara did this morning. To read those things that are inspired, that are mystical, to help us remember. Because it doesn't feel, it feels good. You read that and you're like, oh, it feels so good and it feels like this sense of relief. It's because you already know it in here. If you didn't know it, you wouldn't have that sense of relief. It's remembering. So our job is to do whatever it takes for us to remember the truth of the divine, the truth of ultimate reality. It means to do things like create affirmations for yourself and to use them. Affirmations that help you remember the truth and remember who you are. It means doing affirmative prayer so that when you are hypnotized by this material world thinking that this is ultimate reality, that you can lift yourself to a higher knowing and you can see from a bigger perspective so that you can see that which is eternal and unchanging, that is always present. The more that we know those truths and the more that we feel that presence in our lives, the easier it is to move back into that place when life is challenging, when difficulties show up in our lives, because they're bound to. That's part of this human experience. So the easier it is then to see beneath the wavy glass, the more we go there, the easier it is to remember. And the result is then, as we remember and as we know and as we embody that truth, that the reality of the infinite one is here, then we become a clear conduit for it to express in our lives, for it to express in the world, for it to express through you and as you. And so blessings to each and every single one of you as you walk this path of remembering, as you walk this path of creating the most magnificent life for yourself, as you show up as a beneficial presence because you are a conduit for that. Blessings to you as you walk this spiritual path, living this spiritual life. So blessings to you. And so I invite you to join me in an affirmative prayer. And so what I recognize right now is that omnipresence of that one is just what that says, ever present everywhere, in its fullness and in its allness, before time began and unto the ends of time. That infinite one simply is. And not only is it simply is, but it is the ground of all beingness. It is that which permeates and imbues all things. It is that which fills all things with its presence to overflowing. For in truth, it is the only ultimate reality that there is. It is the only power. It is the only presence. It is the only principle. It is the only thing. And it is expressing itself as all things in this material world. And so I recognize that that infinite one is a presence of absolute intelligence and creativity. That it is a presence of peace and harmony and order. That it is a presence of love and generosity and inclusion and oneness. And as I recognize that it is all these things, that means then that all of these things are already present right where we are, at every moment of our lives, in everything that we do. And so I know today that as we have turned to the truth with a capital T, that we have become clearer conduits for it to flow into our lives as the good that we desire, as health, as wholeness, as balance and order, as harmonious relationships, as clear thinking, perfect decisions, insights that we have been seeking to have. That it flows through us as kindness and compassion for others and care. That it really, in its infinite nature, within that one is anything and everything we could ever need. And so today we recognize that it is already present, right here, right now. And in that the good flows and unfolds and fills our human experience. And I also speak this word right now about anyone who is experiencing loss or difficulty, the people in Morocco and the people in Hawaii, and every person who is experiencing loss right now, recognizing that the presence of Spirit, in whatever way they need it right now, is present. That it is wrapping itself around them as a sense of peace and comfort, as a sense of hope and light, as creativity and intelligence guiding them to do whatever needs to be done. That it is simply the good, and it is ever present, and it is unfolding itself right now. I also speak this word, of course, about every single politician in this country, every single decision maker, knowing that the infinite presence is right where they are, unfolding as intelligence, as perfect decisions, as inner guidance, in a way that serves humanity. And so it is with a grateful heart that I release this prayer into the infinite creative law of the universe, knowing that it is unfolding itself all around us right now. We simply revel in that. We bask in that presence and in that truth. And so if you are in agreement with me, I invite you to join me in saying, "And so it is." Lovely. So I really only have one invitation for you, just is to mark your calendars for the last Sunday of this month, which is the 24th. We're going to be doing Sunday service in the park and have a picnic afterwards. So we invite you to put that on your calendar and join us that day. Feel free to bring friends or family or anyone who might enjoy doing that. Otherwise, our Sunday talks are available online. You know that. We have prayer support after service. We invite you to follow us on our social media accounts, which are listed on your insert right there, and that's it. So I invite you to repeat after me. The love and light of Spirit are within me now.
The love and light of Spirit are within me now.
I own it and I share it.
I own it and I share it.
I am it. I am a beneficial presence.
I am a beneficial presence.
And so it is.